had no home to go to, and they didn't know that. You basically had to tell them.
One of the loudest challenges that we had is how do we break the bad news? They look around the room and they see that someone's missing.
Oh boy, yeah.
That was something we had to prepare for.
Except for a brief ceasefire, there's been an almost constant Israeli bombardment of Gaza, much of which has been pummeled into wreckage, with half the population facing severe hunger.
You think all Israelis have PTSD? Well, what about Gazans?
I'm sure they are the same. And when they undergo events such as this will take its toll. And it doesn't matter if they are on this side or the other side.
If you look at the pictures on television as the hostages were coming back day after day, some of them don't look physically abused. Was that deceptive or?
I think it was very deceptive. So there's not a single person that came back that didn't have a significant physical injury or a medical problem. On top of that, some of them were getting medication
Uppers.
to look better than they actually were.
I just heard a story about a young person who was branded like the Holocaust. Did you see signs?
Yes.
You saw signs of branding.
We did see signs of branding. We definitely saw signs of being handcuffed.
The stories of sexual abuse are just emerging. And there are indications that this was central to the message that the terrorists wanted to send.
We did hear and see evidence of sexual abuse in a significant part of the people we have treated. We also heard evidence, and that was one of the hardest parts, of abuse against those that have stayed, both physical and sexual.
You mean the ones who are still there?
Yes.
Did you hear of a psychological torture in that they were told Israel doesn't exist anymore?
What really struck me is how prepared the Hamas terrorists were with their psychological torment. It was structured and pre-planned. They're constantly saying, nobody cares about you. You are here alone. You hear the bombs falling, they don't care about you. We're here to protect you. And this is really played with their minds. There have been some episodes when they separated two family members, separated them, and then brought them back together, and then separated them and brought them back together. So as a parent, you would do anything in order to have your child with you, even when you're in captivity.
Was there a protocol that you followed? Was there a formula how you talk to a hostage?
Well, there was no protocol. We had to make that up as we went. And now, unfortunately, we are the world experts in receiving people that were hostage.
CBS News.
Right now, the world is going through psychological warfare with all the fake, phony news and all the other stuff out there that social medias has created just within the past 10 years. And it's become a disease in and of itself, pertaining to how it is affecting our children. It is affecting our children's learning abilities. It is affecting how people react and respond to one another. It is affecting psychological in and of themselves towards the suicide rate that has went up dramatically just within the past few years, especially since COVID has hit. And I could go on and on and on in how that I have expressed to others. There's going to be carnal damage in any war of both groups. You cannot avoid it. You cannot avoid it. And one of the main things that they was talking about a while ago was that Israel actually shot 3 of the hostages in a gun battle over there that they admitted that they done. And, you know, whenever you have an all-out and out war, you're going to have your own men. It's going to shoot your own men accidentally, or you're going to have your own men that's going to use improper armory that could either harm themselves or kill one another with. That's the cost with war. That goes with the package of war. You cannot avoid that. And as far as the PMS, post-traumatic stress disorder, that's going to be on both sides, not only in the field, but out of the field too as well. That's one of the reasons why David and I felt like so strongly that it was imperative for us to come back here and teach these people the negativities of war, because of the way that the general public around here did not respond properly to one of their so-called war heroes during World War II that sat back and allowed for him to basically destroy himself and destroy his family, while others around here didn't even have the decency of picking up the phone and calling the proper authorities towards checkmating him on it. That was one of the primary reasons why David and I put up this sign talking about the 3 H's, talking about the Windmill Ministries missions, putting up the Purple Heart Dragon Memorial, putting up a memorial out here because of all the unnecessary bloodshed with all the horrendous shootings and etc. that's been going on, and also with the bombing of Oklahoma, and also what happened during 9/11. The whole thing is out of kilter. It's out of tune with norms. And if we don't watch, this is all leading to something, and it's not going to be a good picture. It's kind of like the person that continues to keep sliding down the cliff every time they grab a hold of a root or a branch, and they think that they're fixing to go 2 or 3 feet up towards the top of the mountain, and instead they slide down 3 or 4 or 5 feet because the mountainside is steep, and plus it's muddy or whatever. But my question is this: what is it going to look like when we finally do get down to the bottom? Because we can see a trajectory course of what the world has taken, especially since COVID hit. Now, they talk about a Christmas present, okay, coming from North Korea. This was the Christmas present. This was the Christmas present that Kim Jong-un kept telling everybody about, that is coming to America, that is coming to America. Well, we have got the Christmas present. And the Christmas present is actually enlarging, with problem on top of problem on top of problem on top of another problem. It's advancing. And if we're not smart enough to identify that, then we will be, as a society, doomed.
He didn't like that.
When she left, he didn't.
Paloma Picasso, the artist's last surviving child, was 4 years old when Picasso and Gillot split. For the next decade, she and her brother Claude would spend about 4 months a year with their father.
What I always thought was fascinating is that every time we arrived from Paris with Claude, the house would look different, because he would have been maybe through a phase of doing ceramics, so the house was filled with...
We're dealing with a deteriorating society in so many different ways, and the news media don't realize what they're involved in, pertaining to. Some of them are putting out signals of good, and some of them are putting out signals of bad. Well, in between the signals of good and the signals of bad, what do you got in between? Chaos. Anarchy. I mean, what the church world around here has done, they will be responsible. And I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying those that could have initiated some sort of help or support coming to the Windmill Ministries missions. What that they have been a part of is allowing for sin to fester and to grow, just like them having satanic clubs down in Memphis now in school parties, especially schools that does teach religion in their schools, regardless whether it's the religion of Christianity or the religion of hoodoo or Hindu or some of these other religions, that now Satanism has come a play towards being part of that design. And unless that school system deviates completely away from all spiritual matters, religious matters, they feel like that Satanism, occultist out there, has just as much right to form their own little clique as everybody else does. And looking at it from their perspective, they're probably right. Now, is that what our ancestors intended whenever they put into the equation of freedom of speech and freedom of religion? Absolutely not. And you'll never convince me anything any different, because whenever we was fighting up against the redcoats, we knew that they was psychologically damaged towards wanting to come over here and rule our lives like ruling a bunch of livestock. And that's the reason why our people stood up against that, because we knew that it was exteriorly wrong. And it's still wrong to this day in slavery and wanting to enslave people like that. But today, the satanic, demonic spiritual world has become very, very slick and more crafty, because now today you can enslave people. And even though you may not put a ball and chain around their neck or around their ankles, you can still enslave that person by manipulating that person or blackmailing that person in that person doing what you're expected for that person to do. And if not, that person is going to suffer severe consequences on not doing it. It's evil. It's evil in the fullest form, and it's rising up, just as the Bible talks about, that in the last days Satan will come down in great wrath, because it knoweth its time is short. In other words, it has been now revealed. It has been exposed. It has been discolored in the form that it truly is. And because of it, it's that much more gruesome in the things that we're seeing today on every level imaginable. It doesn't matter if it's on a spiritual level, physical level, emotional level, psychological level, a mental level, or whatever kind of level. It's coming in groves right now. It's coming in absolute groves, and there's nothing that we can do as Christians other than to pray, stay together, and continue to pray together in hoping that we can escape some of these catastrophes that are happening to us right now. And that's exactly what the Bible teaches. It says to pray that you're worthy to escape these things that are going to befall upon to mankind in the last days. And if it's not coming in a physical form pertaining to the forces of nature, regardless whether it's too much rain, not enough rain, there's diseases, there's insects, there's people now that's going through all kinds of physical aspects, but it's also the psychological part of it. It's not just the war. It's all the things that surround war. War is a horrible, horrible thing. It's never to be glorified or glorified in any form or fashion. Yes, God bless our soldiers. God bless our American armed forces that are willing to sacrifice their lives and put their lives out there for the benefit and the good of freedom and democracy. God bless them, and God bless the military, and God bless our first responders and those who are willing to see and observe and go through some of the most goriest, ungodliest things that you can ever imagine.
Mostly because of the high-energy star at the center of it, Kylie Minogue.
Once more, if you watch TV, which is the one-eyed devil that I've heard explained to me thousands of times by other people that believe in God and want to keep a form of godly religion about them, you can't, it has reached a point today to where you could actually go into a business. It don't matter if it's a barbershop. It don't matter if it's a beauty parlor. It don't matter if it's a doctor's clinic, and 9 times out of 10 here in America, there will be a TV, and that TV will be on. That way you can be exposed to the things that TV is putting out. It's the same way with the computer, but intensify it now about 1,000-fold. Because now people is walking around, not even paying attention to where they're going, bumping into things and falling into holes and basically bringing destruction into their own lives because they're so infatuated with these devices. And it's not the device that they're infatuated with, it's what is on the device. The same thing as TV. A TV sitting there that ain't plugged up and ain't working, it's just a TV. But it's what is on that TV that is magnifying people to it, that is drawing people to it. And whenever you're putting out all these mixed signals to where people don't know up from down, down from up, good from bad, bad from good, good or vice versa, you're going to have a confused society to the degree that now they're calling good evil and calling evil good. They're mixed up. You're dealing with a rotten, rotten society that if we do not catch this quick enough and soon enough, God only knows what it's going to be once we get down to the bottom of this. And I guarantee you, it's not going to be a pretty sight at all. One thing that I can admire about our previous ancestors before World War II, they knew that things was hesitantly getting worse and worse and worse over across the pond. You keep in mind, they did not have near the communications back then as we do today. A matter of fact, back then, a lot of times, the way people got their information was through somebody else's radio or somebody else's TV, provided that they had one. People would actually load up and go to people's homes, somebody that had a radio or a TV. That way they could experience the same thing that the other party was experiencing. Well, today I've seen the same thing happen with artificial intelligence pertaining to social media. I've seen kids cluster together in parking lots, and there would be 10 or 12 of them or whatever, hovered around somebody that was rich enough to afford social media platform and have a smartphone or a smartphone device, tablet, whatever, and they would hover around that person because they wanted to see the information that was coming out of that device. Today, now, there's more of them that does have a little bit of money, and they do prioritize having a phone and being hooked up to phone services, probably more so than some of the other things that they prioritized at one time. What I'm getting at, this is a information tool, TV, internet, satellite, etc., that people has been drawn to. In the drawing to this information era that we're now living in, it has become that much more complex and confusing, and a lot of these people, their psychological status, their minds are not mature enough to handle this, and because of it, it's causing people to basically flip out, and the next thing you know, the husband is jealous about the wife, or the wife is jealous about the husband because of something that they're looking at, and the next thing you know, they wind up falling in the floor, landing on their face, and now their whole world around them is crumbling because of all the static and all the misinformation out there that is being broadcasted. Like I said, they're putting out too many signals. There's too many cooks in the kitchen. And because of it, it is not being effective in the way that it was originally supposed to have been, because originally, whenever the first communication devices come out, was wiring to people and letting them know that something was going on in some other town or in some other community that that we felt like that was essential. But if you really want to get down to the brass tacks of it, it was the Native American that created communication devices. They used fire and smoke. to be able to warn and tell their tribal people, sometimes as much as 20, 30 miles away, that they would send messages to that group of people and let them know the dangers that now that they was experiencing that could be coming their way. So there is an essential tool to communications, but the devil is now using these communications to bring chaos and anarchy into people's lives, and because of it, it is having a profound negative effect upon to the world. And if people can't see that and understand that, then obviously it's kind of like some of the Jews that was talking the other day about anti-Semitism, the way that they was attacking these Jewish synagogues and going after various religious symbols that they used to worship with. The way that this Jewish guy expressed it on TV, he said, if you cannot see the anti-Semitism that is going on, then odds are you yourself is an anti-Semitism person, and because of it, you're not willing to see what is actually happening and going on. And that basically sums it up. You know, if you're a warmonger, odds are you're probably going to be inspired by watching people die, by watching beheadings. You're going to be inspired by watching things that's gruesome and gross on TV or on the internet. The true Christian is not inspired by these things. I have never been inspired by violence, bloodshed, or hardship upon anybody's life. It is a form of misery. And if you are entertaining misery, then odds are misery is probably going to come to you in some form or fashion. It may not come right now. It may not even come in this lifetime. But eventually, what you're spewing out is going to come back sevenfold in your own personal life, and if not in this lifetime, in the lifetime to come. It's really sad in how perverted that the world has become in not recognizing these dangers and not being able to compartmentalize them properly so that we can warn other people, hey, this is what you should do whenever you're doing this, and this is what you should not do whenever you're doing this. You have to put up the barriers out there, and you have to have good teaching aids to be able to teach people and instruct people in this is damaging and this can be beneficial. You have to be able to identify the wolf at the door, and if you're not, then odds are you probably are the wolf. You probably are the wolf.
And Serena Altschul has proof from the world of fashion.
In a remote house.
Now, this is a good thing, I believe, to me, on my perspective, looking at the glass of water towards it being half full or half empty. This is a good thing that they're talking about here pertaining to the people over in Arizona. I'm assuming probably the Pueblos in that area, but let's just watch and see.
In the northeast corner of Arizona, among the red rocks and vast expanses of the Navajo Nation, you'll hear a beat so steady it keeps nearly perfect time.
It's not the Pueblo, but the Navajo. The Navajo is more in the northeast part of Arizona, going over into Colorado. That's your primary people that lived there before the Europeans come over here and wanted to genocide them.
Hour after hour, day after day, artist Naomi Glasses sits on her floor in silence, weaving at her loom.
It's very meditative, and having to do these repetitive motions, you kind of just get into a trance. It really is a great time to just sit and think.
The 26-year-old thinks about the 6 generations of family weavers who have come before her, passing down this rich Native American tradition.
And I just do that for all the wool going through, and that's how you build a design.
Now, those designs, which can take months to make and cost thousands, have caught the attention of the fashion world. In particular, Ralph Lauren, a brand Naomi always wore as a kid and dreamed of someday working with, but never thought possible.
I definitely dreamt of it while weaving.
It may seem like an improbable journey for a shy girl from Arizona who was mercilessly bullied as a 5-year-old for having a cleft palate. To escape the torment, Naomi found solace on a skateboard.
It's always been a safe space where I feel like I can be myself, and continually learning how to be even more confident.
She took that confidence to the loom, first trying her hand at weaving at 16. Her brother Tyler showed her their grandmother's ways, and soon the siblings started selling their pieces at the local trading post. But their parents encouraged them to think bigger, so in 2020, they turned to social media.
Get it! Get it!
Using the reservation as a set, Tyler posted Naomi showing off her colorful creations and those impressive skateboarding skills. This daring video became a worldwide sensation.
And then suddenly it blew up and it traveled everywhere.
Including, incredibly, to Ralph Lauren, a brand famous for embracing Native American culture. In Naomi, the fashion house serendipitously found a like-minded partner for its first artist in residence.
For my father, for Ralph Lauren, he has always loved the West.
Ralph's son, David Lauren, is the company's chief branding and innovation officer.
He has always gone in search of the art and the culture that Naomi loves and cherishes as well. And so the ability to come together to create something and to be inspired together is beautiful, and it keeps getting better by the day.
Oh, these are pants.
Those are pants.
The pattern is so beautiful. These days, Naomi is busy launching her new collection out this month. She calls it a love letter to her people.
Yeah, to
Just
me,
gonna
that's
put
what
this beauty on. Oh my gosh. Naomi's hoping to promote her culture in other ways too.
proper hat.
There you go.
The Ralph Lauren ad campaign, filmed at her family's home in Arizona, created dozens of jobs for local Navajo.
It's a big moment in Indigenous design history,
Do you
really.
feel that sense of duty?
Absolutely. I feel that it's important that we're represented in a beautiful way, and I'm really excited to be able to share these designs with the world.
She also feels a responsibility to use her newfound fame to raise money for skate parks on her reservation.
Skateboarding did a lot for my own mental health, and I feel like it can do so much more for so many other people and their mental health.
Naomi Glass's late grandmother once told her weaving could create a life for her. She used to sit quietly at the loom and wonder what she meant. Now, she says, she finally understands.
The dreams that I dreamt here at the loom have come true.
There's a saying that idle hands is a devil's workshop. Okay? And that's pertaining to sinful activity. This lady, at a young age, found that she used skateboarding as therapy to take her mind off of all the other problems that was surrounding her life. And because of it, it allowed for her to grow and mature. Now, at her age, she is now reflecting that maturity back to not just her people, but to all people. And hopefully somebody can learn from this towards expressing themselves in a positive way rather than a negative way. Once more, drugs has been a big influence over here in America. It used to be alcohol pertaining to moonshine, but they changed that up probably back in the 60s. I'm assuming probably back in the 60s during the Woodstock days, whenever people went overboard with wanting to get high all the time, and it basically created a bunch of gypsies or hippies, to the degree of people that wanted to just lounge around and not do nothing with their hands. But ordinarily, you're going to do something, and that's why you get the saying of idle hands is a devil's workshop, because people, rather than choosing to do something good, positive in their lives, does something negative. And that's the reason why we're seeing all the violence and people getting out here committing crime and raping and destroying other people's lives, because their life themselves they have allowed to destroy. Once more, those idle hands is a devil's workshop. And it is. But this lady at a young age figured out that, hey, I can occupy my mind. I can do something that's therapy that I can enjoy. It's not wicked. It's not sinful. It's not grotesque. I can grow and mature. And now she has learned to pass those traits down to other people that can use a positive effect on their lives. To me, it was a very, very blessing story. The Navajo people basically starts right there in the northeast part of Arizona, going into the Four Corners area. But if you look at where she was talking about, that's basically in the Grand Canyon area. And Grand Canyon area is a beautiful, beautiful place in the wintertime, whenever the snow falls and the ground is still warm enough that the roads is basically cleared, but you see like a foot of snow everywhere, and it's just like being in Wonderland out there in the Flagstaff area. I love the Flagstaff area. It was a beautiful, beautiful area for me to venture off into, but so also was Durango, Colorado, and going up through the Million Man Highway whenever it was snowing, and seeing the transformations of rocks and the transformations of the surroundings with people as well as property. This world has so much good to offer. So much good, if people would just take the time and look at it in the right perspective. Once more, is the glass half full or is it half empty? Are you part of the problem or are you part of the solution to the problem? I personally believe that a lot of people that want to complain about the problem more so than have a solution to the problem are part of the problem. Because all they want to do is complain about the problems. They don't want to come up with solutions to the problems. And as far as I'm concerned, people like that is the problem. You're a nagger. You're a whiner. You're a complainer. Why not get your hands out from underneath your hips, stand up, and start saying something or doing something? That's the reason why the Windmill Ministries missions have put out as many videos as I have, hoping that I could affect just one person's life in a positive way. And if I have affected one person's life in a positive way, all of the videos that I've went and made on social media, all the problems that I've went through, all the lies, all the deceit, all the other stuff that I've went through will make it all worth it in the end. Because everything about this world is temporal. Physically, mentally, socially, economically, it's all temporal. It's here today and gone tomorrow. We are, as the Bible says, as a vapor in the wind. We're here today and gone tomorrow. But also, so is the plants, the rocks, the trees, the houses, all the other things, because one day all of this is going to be destroyed. Mankind is going to bring destruction upon to himself to the point that God has to come back and show his ugly side again in destroying those who are destroying the planet. And we're getting closer to that each and every day as we see humanity get further and further and further in the left field versus the right. once more, war has never been a pleasurable, glorious thing to experience or to be involved in, because it has so many repercussions that goes just beyond the actual killing field. And that's exactly what Hans over there has done over there in Jerusalem, Israel. He has created a killing field for his own people. And now Jerusalem had to make a decision in choosing between the lesser of the two evils. Well, are we just going to let him get away with this again? Are we going to come down on the people? And because of it, it has created, yes, collateral damage that goes along with war. And if you don't want war, the best thing to do is don't start war. Don't start war. Learn to compromise. Learn to listen to other people's feelings. Learn to know the fairness between everybody versus nobody.
Can the border crisis push politicians into action? And breaking this morning, a new CBS News survey of voters in Iowa.
The border is a disgrace. It is an absolute disgrace that our politicians and the American people has let it fester and grow to the intensity of what it has done. Donald Trump is a very, very sharp, bold speaker, and usually he inserts his mouth before he inserts his brain. And he said some things this week pertaining to immigrants, and he should have been more persistent in saying illegal immigrants versus just immigrants. But the fact of the matter is, between all the illegal immigrants, it is poisoning the blood of the American people. That I agree with, because you have some of the most far-fetched ideal people that's come over here that wanted to influence us, that wanted to entangle us in their thoughts and in their ideals and in their way of life, in which there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're not forceful about it. But whenever you come over here and you start gaining up on the American life and on the American culture, then there is something wrong with that. And that's one of the reasons why Donald Trump spoke up the way that he did about poisoning the blood of the American culture.
In Iowa and New Hampshire shows a ray of hope for Republicans who want to deny Donald Trump the nomination. Time has just about run out on a border security deal in Congress this year, but the pressure to do something to control the massive number of migrants looking for a better life in the U.S. is growing. Along with that, the former president's harsh rhetoric out on the campaign trail.
If you hate America, if you want to abolish Israel, if you sympathize with jihadists, then we don't want you.
Can any of his Republican challengers catch Donald Trump as the campaigning in Iowa and New Hampshire enters the final month? We've been in those two states talking to voters and have some newsy results from one of those states. We'll talk with former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Then we'll turn to efforts being made on an immigration deal that could help free up funding to Ukraine and Israel. Texas Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez, Delaware Democratic Senator Chris Coons, and Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S., Oksana Markarova, will all be here. Plus, the year-end forecast from the Fed might actually make Americans feel better about the economy going into 2024. We'll tell you why. It's all just ahead on Face the Nation.
I hate to see the American land get ravaged again and again and again, especially the way that it was being ravaged the first time whenever the Europeans wanted to come over here and dictate and dominate not just the Native Americans, but all Americans. And it basically took a bloodbath pertaining to the Revolutionary War before people finally got out of their stupor and understanding that this poison that they had brought over to America was not who America was and was not what America wanted to be. And it actually took a revolution and I hope to God that that's not what it takes this time again, before people start waking up and understanding that all these different cultures that come over here, once they become united in their way of thinking and conform, like something like 20,000 people a day coming over here over the border. It's illegal immigrants that's coming over here from everywhere, but the majority of them are basically either Mexicans or Latinos. Once they come over here and there's enough of them, they can become united, and the next thing you know, they get in our politics, and the next thing you know, they'll rule America the way that they want to rule America, the same way that they're ruling Mexico. Now, if you want America to turn into another Mexico or a Honduras or Brazil or one of those other southern continents below us, if you want America to be like them, continue to not stand up against all the illegal immigrants and all the illegal trade that's coming to America. Because I guarantee you, that is the trajectory that we're on right now, that eventually they'll get into our politics, they'll get into our communities, they'll get everywhere. And I'm not saying that they're all that way, because there's a lot of good Mexicans, there's a lot of good Latino people. But this is where it becomes complex, and you got to separate the good from the bad. And you got to understand it. Yes, it was immigrants that come to America that made America what America was, but it was not the immigrants that brought the spirit of America to America, because it was already here, founded by the native indigenous Indian people. And whenever you start crossing that line in trying to say, well, we're going to be this way versus that way, well, now you have gone beyond the perimeter of just wanting to come over here and better your lives and come over here and better our lives. Now you're trying to destroy our way of life and create a brand new culture. And that's the part that not just certain people are standing up and recognizing, but a great deal of people, including Donald Trump, is recognizing. And like I said a while ago, Donald Trump, he's what my grandfather used to say, he's a straight shooter, and he really isn't a good politician whenever it comes to wording his words properly in putting his message out there. You got to be able to understand that Donald Trump is old school, and he's not a professional politician in being a professional speaker. And because of it, sometimes some of the things that he says and how he says them sounds a little abrupt. But then, if you really pay attention, whenever somebody like me brings it to your attention that he was actually meaning this, but saying it in a harsh, hard way, that you got to open up your understandings about some of these people that are straight shooters. And sometimes I'm liable to spew out something that really sounds very offensive to people. And you know what? I've really thought a lot of times in how that I'm going to present my message. And not all messages are going to be effective with all people. In other words, if I'm speaking to a group of people that's basically all teenagers, or let's say they're 25 or younger, I'm going to speak to them in a completely different atmosphere. It may be the exact same message that I would speak of people that was senior citizens, but I'm going to tone it in different areas to where I can be more effective with the 25 and younger crowd versus the elderly crowd. That's what makes a good speaker a speaker. And ordinarily, you cannot do this on your own accord. You have to be regulated, or you have to be open for the Holy Spirit to be your teacher. That way the teacher can teach you, this is what I want you to say, this is how I want you to say it to this particular audience. Now, if we was talking to a different audience, the Holy Spirit is liable to say, this is how I want you to approach this subject matter, and this is how I want you to distribute this particular message. Why? Because it's more effective. Now, whenever you're a president or a prior president of the United States, you got a great big microphone. And now you're talking to not just one group, but thousands of groups. Thousands of groups. And you're not going to be able to satisfy all the groups all the time. I think it was the Kennedy family that said that you can please part of the people all the time, all the people part of the time, but you'll never please all the people all the time. And in essence, what they've said is true. Depending upon how big of a mic you got, and depending upon what group of people that you're talking to during the time that you're talking to them. Because it does make a difference in how people are going to receive you. And it's not so much in how they receive you, but how they receive your message. Because you got to be a good messenger to be able to get your message out there. And you got all these different personalities that you got to satisfy at the same time. And by doing so, you use this technique, that technique, this technique, and that technique, but you allow for the Holy Spirit to lead you and guide you. All right, God, what is the best technique that you want me to use here pertaining to the audience that I'm standing in front of? And I guarantee you, if you'll do that every time, you'll come out a winner. Because it's actually the Holy Spirit that's speaking through you by using that technique of bringing forth that message. And it goes the same way with a preacher in behind a pulpit. You don't necessarily have to be a politician, but a preacher, if he's going to be a good preacher, depending upon the audience that he's talking to, will be a defining moment in how that he addresses that audience. May be the exact same message that he spoke to the audience that morning whenever basically all the senior citizens was there, but now he's not talking to the senior citizens. Now he's talking to the younger group. And now the younger group they're not quite as antsy towards wanting to listen to the message because they got 1,000 other things on their mind. What happened to them the night before, where they want to go, what they didn't get, their dissatisfactions in life, their satisfactions in life. Their minds are wandering 1,000 to none. So in order for that messenger to be a good message, to bring forth the same message, he has to use a different technique in his messages abilities to be able to get that same message to that younger group and be able to walk away. And let's say there's 85% of the people that actually listened, understood the message. He used a complete different tactic. Why? Because it was the Holy Spirit that was guiding him in what tactic that he needed to use on that particular person or on that particular group of people. That's how you become a good, informative messenger. By allowing the Holy Spirit to lead you and direct you. And sometimes the message that God lays on my heart to put out to people is abrupt. And to me, it sounds like, hey, I shouldn't put this way, because if I do, I'm going to offend a lot of people. Well, you know what? You have to put your own personal feelings to the side. If you're going to be a proper, professional messenger, and you got to say, okay, God, even though I don't like what you're telling me towards the method that I need to use here, I'm still going to use your method. You let God lead you, and you will come out on top every time. It's only whenever you start taking things out of perspective and you think that you know it all, towards being arrogant, and you get up there and basically make a fool out of yourself. And the next thing you know, instead of people liking you, they start disliking you. And the next thing you know, they start throwing apples at you and oranges and rotten tomatoes and eggs at you. It's been going on for years. Years and years and years. That's the reason why Jesus Christ was such an effective messenger. Jesus could speak to a congregation of 5,000, not having no type of PA, not having no type of electronics, not having no type of enhanced device in making his voice resonate before the people. It was the Holy Spirit that quickened those people, that got those people's attention, and then used Jesus Christ as the mouthpiece to that message and the method of the message during the time that he was talking to the group of people or the person that he was talking to. You allow for yourself to be a tool for God, from God, and you'll come out on top every time. Every time.
And welcome to Face the Nation. In Washington, lawmakers have been working through the weekend to negotiate a deal on border security and immigration as part of a larger package of aid for Ukraine and Israel. But there is no deal in sight yet, no framework, and not enough time to get it done before the end of the year. Meanwhile, we are less than 1 month from the votes being taken in the 2024 campaign.
This is the reason why that people say that our government, our system, is a broken system. It's because they cannot get together in pulling together for the will of we the people up in the White House. Those was the very same characteristics that befallen upon to the White House before the Civil War broke out here in America, was because they had too many different opinions about too many different subject matters, and it created chaos in the White House, and the chaos went from the White House down to the church house. It went from the church house down to the schoolhouse. It went from the schoolhouse all the way down to the outhouse, and that's basically whenever all out and out war broke out here in America. And if we don't watch, this is just my opinion, you can take it for what it's worth, but if we don't watch, we're going down the exact same path that our ancestors did before us, and if we don't watch, we're going to go through the same type of horrors that they experienced before they woke up and realized, my God, we're only destroying ourselves versus helping one another. We're destroying one another. And it took 5, almost 6 years before the people finally started coming out of their stupor of realizing that really and truly, if we continue on the path that we're on, the North ain't going to win, the South ain't going to win, and nobody's going to win. And usually that's the concept of war that Satan has injected into people's hearts and into people's minds, because Satan basically brought destruction into his own life by challenging God and doing what he done towards starting war up in heaven, forcing God to show his bad hand that he rather not have never have had to have showed. And now Satan, the same Antichrist spirit, wants to bring it right down here to not just the Americans, but the Homo sapiens in general, to the degree that now we destroy ourselves versus helping ourselves. Satan has brought destruction into his own life. He's out to kill, steal, and destroy. He's the author of confusion. And if he can take all these gizmos and gadgets and use them for his own accord towards bringing destruction to humanity, that's exactly what he is intending to do. And if we do not wake up to his devices, to his schemes, we are probably going to make the same mistakes as our ancestors did. And they're making mistakes before they finally awakened. That's the reason why God sends people like me to help to clear the air or to spearhead in the right direction towards people coming out of their stupor. That way they don't have to learn their lesson in an incredible hard way. And some, we can look at the past to understand that some did not learn their lessons. They did not want to listen to the messengers, and because of it, God once more had to bring destruction into that whole culture, into that whole generation, or that whole community, that whole town. We can see that throughout history of what has happened to other generations of people before us.
On my first day back in the White House, I will terminate every open borders policy of the Biden administration, stop the invasion of our southern border, and begin the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. I will immediately restore and expand the Trump travel ban on entry from terror-plagued countries.
That kind of talk, according to our CB.
Now you keep in mind, to the true red-blooded American, especially those that are narrow-minded, that can't think for themselves, odds are he's going to hit a good tune with them, okay? But on the same time, how about the Hispanics? How about the Mexicans? How about some of the other cultures that has come over here in groves? Do you think that he's going to hit a good tune with them? No, absolutely not. So once more, Donald Trump is not a good messenger, because he could have brought forth the same message and used it in, I'm going to use this word, gigabytes. He could have used gigabyte over here, a gigabyte over there, and a gigabyte over here, and he could have still got his message across of the same meaning, but he could have done it in a much more humbling, intelligent way. That's what makes Donald Trump, to me, not qualified of being a president, because he does not know how to work the people, especially in having a big mic the way that he does. Because granted, if you got a big mic, now you got to be more sensitive in what you say and how that you say it, because it will sound offensive. And I guarantee you, there probably won't be very many Latinos or Mexicans that will be voting for Donald J. Trump. Did he get his message across? Absolutely. Will the red-blooded American person, the narrow-minded person, probably vote for him? Absolutely. But does that make it right in how that he's presenting it? And does it make it right in what he intends to do? Because there should be more of a qualified way of censoring these people, in knowing the difference between those who have come over here to bring harm and hurt to our lives, or those who have come over here that actually wants to embrace and enhance our culture. Because I guarantee you, there is multiple groups of people out there that want to do multiple things to the American culture.
His poll findings is resonating in Iowa, where the former president continues to hold a commanding lead with 58% of likely GOP caucus goers. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is in a distant second with 22% support. CBS News talked to Iowa voters checking out other GOP candidates.
I feel like Trump is one to go in and not care and make these changes now that we need done now. Like the border, I can't even imagine what it's going to be like in a year. I mean, and I don't see how we're not going to be have some kind of terrorist attack between now and then.
We're still faith, family, and friends first, you know.
But it's a different story in New Hampshire, where former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley has emerged as the closest rival to Trump, now at 29% support to his 44%. That is up 18 points since.
And why is that? Why is that? You think it's because she's a female, she's got a pretty smile and pretty teeth? You think that's why? No. It's because she's intelligent and she knows how to present her messages to the people. And because of it, the smart people, the intellectual people, they listen to her and they like her. Trump, on the other hand, he's speaking to a certain particular base of people out there. And the only thing that they can understand is right and wrong, black and white. Because they're narrow-minded people and they can't see that some of the stuff that Donald Trump does is just as damaging, going gun-ho, as it is towards not doing nothing. And if you don't watch, somebody like Donald Trump can get in behind their big speaker, and the next thing you know, they'll either cause a war, or they'll cause another country to boycott us to the degree that it causes that much more damages and problems into our lives. That's the reason why this particular election coming up, this presidential election, is absolutely essential. It is crucial in where America goes towards being in the divided lines, being basically at the crossroads of whether or not we're going to dig deeper into a hole of despair, or whether or not we're going to start pulling ourselves out of the hole of despair towards having a unified nation pertaining to our culture that originally intended for us to be like. Is it a walking tight line walk? Absolutely. It's a balance. If you're going to be a good messenger. Donald Trump, he's a messenger that points his direction towards a certain group of people that wants to hear a certain message coming out of him. And if that be the case, so be it. If there's more of them than it is of the intelligent people, then we have no one to blame but ourselves. Because we did not properly educate the people, and it's not that they're stupid. It's not that they're stupid. They're very intelligent people. It's just that they was taught improperly. They was given the wrong information by the wrong person that could lead into deeper problems rather than pulling us away from the problems. That's my point. That's my point about Donald J. Trump. And the fact of the matter is, he is a straight shooter that comes out with a straight message that it's either black or white. And sometimes whenever you're dealing with politics, it's not necessarily a black and white issue, but it's knowing how to tiptoe around towards making sure that you do not go overboard in offending and making things worse than what you would have had if you went the other way. That's the reason why people are liking her. To me, it don't matter whether or not you're black or white, whether or not you're female or male running for the presidency. I listen to their personalities. I listen to their message. I listen to their opinions. I listen to their techniques and how that they present their message. And I put it all in a lump sum towards this will be the best person to lead us out of the darkness back into the light. That's how I make my assertions. That's how I make my determinations about a president. Now, other people, I'm sure that they use different tactics about who they're going to put in charge or who they want to be in charge. But these could absolutely be the wrong people that if you don't watch, instead of making things better, they actually make things worse. They make things worse. And I think we're seeing the repercussions of that in how that we handled COVID towards giving out all these stimulus checks. And now it has created a persona to the degree that even my son agrees that today, working in the labor fields, we have more substandard laborers than we do true laborers because they're fuzzy-headed, they've got their minds on the telephone. Most of them, whenever you work them, you're lucky if they work for the first 6 hours before they say, this job is too hard for me, I ain't going to do it. Or within the second week after their first check, they cut a trail and get out of there anyway. Substandard laborers is what COVID has created because of the methodology that we used during Donald Trump's era and how that they wanted to kosher or soften the blow of COVID. In the meantime, it costed us $5 trillion, and probably about $2 of that $1 trillion went to people that it never should have went to begin with. Why? Because the American government did not censor their people properly, and we was giving checks to people that already had, that was worth $250,000 to $500,000, maybe even $1 million statuses. We was still giving them checks just like if they was the homeless people on the streets. As a matter of fact, I know for a fact that there's poor people that either did not get a stimulus check or the stimulus check come to them in the wrong direction, in the wrong way, and it was improper, and now the timeline has went over to the degree that now they can't make good on the money, and now they basically was beat out of their stimulus check. I know that for a fact, that there was lots of people in which, I'm going to just use this for a category, an individual that got a check, that was fighting for his disability, finally got a stimulus check, but then his sister held the check for 6 months, and then whenever he finally found out about the check and got the check, went to cash the check, now the check was out of date. He can't get the government to reconcile pertaining to that money that was never actually turned into true money. Oh, it was turned into a check, but he didn't get the check. And that's just one example times probably 1,000 other different examples that has happened with people that truly needed the money but didn't get it. On top of those that didn't need the money and got it.
Since our September survey. DeSantis is next with 11%, followed by former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie at 10%. New Hampshire's Republican primary is also open to independent voters. Carol Smith attended a Haley rally last week.
I'm a lifelong Democrat, and when I saw Nikki Haley in the first debate, I was overwhelmed. She was concise, she was on point, she said what needed to be said, there was no double talk. She needs to be elected. Compared to the other candidates in the field, and don't ask me if it's because she's a woman, because that'll make my hackles go up.
For some analysis, we're joined now by our Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, this is a big move in New Hampshire for Nikki Haley. What's behind it?
It is, Margaret. Good morning. Yeah, Nikki Haley is up substantially from where she was this fall. And one reason is voters tell us they see her as reasonable as compared to the other candidates and prepared to be president. Her number there is on par with the former president. Now, she's helped by the independents who can vote in the New Hampshire primary, and it's not a surprise that she and maybe former Governor Chris Christie are looking to do better in New Hampshire because those independents say they're more amenable to the idea of a candidate who's different from Donald Trump. Now, Trump, for his part, still does well on two key measures. One, he's seen as a strong leader, and two, that those voters think he can beat Joe Biden. Margaret.
Anthony, as we know here, Iowa is still a very comfortable place for Donald Trump. What is different about the dynamic there?
It is. Well, look, he starts with nearly half the Iowa caucus goers say they themselves are part of the MAGA movement. That's a base for Trump, and he's got more voters there saying that they will only consider voting for him. Iowa has often been a test for the more further right-leaning part of the party. No different this year. You look at some policy measures. They have more voters there saying that they're in favor of making abortion illegal, in favor of ideas like deporting undocumented immigrants. So all of that adds up to a more sizable lead for the former president. Margaret.
Anthony Salvanto, thank you. And we turn now to one of the Republican candidates for president, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. He joins me this morning from Mendham, New Jersey. Good morning to you, sir.
And you know what? This is the worrisome part, is that we have drove ourselves to the point that now,
governor of that state just endorsed
that
your
now,
rival,
today, it opens up a brand new venue pertaining to the people that are concerned about the American status. And it's genuine. It is. It's very genuine in their concerns. But why did that same group of people allow for this to get in the shape to begin with? They was asleep at the wheel. They put too much faith in their politicians and they put it on automatic pilot. It was on cruise control. And now they've all awakened to a nightmarish event that's not necessarily going to absolutely affect their lives, but it's going to affect their children and their children's children's lives and their grandchildren's lives down the road. They have finally woken up to this. But don't add insult to injury by choosing the wrong candidate to thinking that this candidate is going to take us out of the darkness back into the light, because this candidate could actually drive us deeper, further into the darkness. That's the part that disturbs me, that bothers me, that worries me.
But what won't be a defining moment is your poll of 450 people.
Okay, but it's not
6
just
weeks
it's
before
not
the
just
primary.
it's not just our poll though. I mean, the National Review, conservative leaning National Review has a piece saying that even if Chris Christie pulled off an upset in New Hampshire, there'd be nowhere else for him to go. A hypothetical Christie win would rely heavily on support from independents and Democrats in the open New Hampshire primary. Those conditions would be impossible to replicate elsewhere. If he's as committed to stopping Trump as he says, it's time for him to retire to his tent. What do you have to say to them?
Well, what I have to say to them is they should try to get the facts right. First of all, Democrats can't vote in the Republican primary in New Hampshire, so they're wrong about that. It's only independents and Republicans.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you read me the quote, Margaret. How about you get accurate? Democrats, you said, reading their quote, can vote. They cannot vote in the New Hampshire primary. Secondly, in Michigan, the very same conditions exist 5 weeks from the New Hampshire primary, which is that Republicans and independents can vote in the Michigan primary. So the fact that they say it can't be repeated anywhere, it will be repeated two elections away from New Hampshire. South Carolina happens in between. And so look, the National Review was campaigning for Ron DeSantis until they concluded that he couldn't win. Now they're campaigning for Nikki Haley, and when they conclude that she can't win either, then they'll move on to somebody else. I don't spend any time worrying about the editors at the National Review.
Okay, noted. So you said, though, for Nikki Haley, who we have, not just CBS, other polls have said she is surging in the state of New Hampshire. You've said she's not a fundamentally serious candidate.
I'm going to stop you. Hold on. I'm going to stop you right there, because in the last two polls that have come out, Nikki Haley was at 13 or 14%, and I was at 10 or 11.
Yeah.
So I don't understand where you talk about surging, Margaret. I know that that's the talking points up on the teleprompter, but it's not surging.
I'm not looking
And
at
the only
teleprompter,
poll that
sir. I'm
shows
looking
any
at your
surging
face. You're up
is
2
yours.
points from our last
Yeah.
poll in September. You said you don't trust any polls. You just cited some. So there are some you like. But let me read you what you have said about Nikki Haley.
Margaret. I'm countering what you say, Margaret. I'm countering what you say about other polls showing surges, which they do not. And so if you want to cite them, at least cite them correctly.
Okay. You said Nikki Haley's not a fundamentally serious candidate when she said, as you just said earlier on our program, that Trump is fit to lead. You said you wish that she cared more about the truth, and things she said about global trade, for example, you say show she doesn't even understand what she's talking about. Are you ruling out ever working with Nikki Haley in the future to defeat Donald Trump?
I'm working on defeating Donald Trump. And I'm the only one in the race who is working on defeating Donald Trump. When she hasn't ruled out being his vice president, I don't think you could take her as a serious contender against.
See, that's the wrong answer right there.
His
answer should have been, I'm working for the best reasonable solution for the American people. That should have been his answer. You know why? Because it's telling me that this individual here is in there over a vendetta, basically a vigilante type motivation, in purposely wanting to target one particular individual towards that individual not becoming president. If that's the reason why that you throwed your hat in the ring towards being the president, then as far as I'm concerned, you're not worthy of the presidency. You're not worthy of the presidency because you went into it in the wrong way. You know, we hear all this backbiting and knife throwing and backstabbing with one another, but where is the solutions to the problems? That's what the American people want to hear. They want to hear the solutions to the problems of getting us out of the darkness and back into the light. Because as of right now, being I was told $34 trillion instead of 33, as of being $34 trillion, our back is against the wall. And if people don't recognize that, then they're very, very naive, gullible, or blind. one or the other.
I don't.
Okay. Well, Nikki Haley, I want to ask you about how some of your opponents who have stood on that debate stage alongside you have talked about her. You did seem to come to Nikki Haley's defense after the last debate when Vivek Ramaswamy heard. You said you think he personally has a woman problem. Do you think your party has a woman problem? Do you think that a woman could be the lead on a Republican ticket?
Sure, I think a woman could be lead on the Republican ticket. And I don't think the party has a woman problem. I think Vivek has a woman problem. And I defended Nikki Haley at that debate because when someone on the stage like Vivek treats someone who is as, smart and accomplished as Nikki is, and has been my friend for 13 years, and he says and compares her intellect to that of his 3-year-old son. The way I was raised, Margaret, is you stand up and you defend someone who you do respect being treated with disrespect by someone else. And that's exactly what I did. I'd do it again. And I think it's the right thing to do.
All right. Chris Christie, we have to leave it there for today. Thanks for joining us. And we have to turn now to the crisis at the border and Texas Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez, who's with us from San Antonio. Welcome back to Face the Nation.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So I want to go into one of the big issues that we know is on the minds for voters.
I've had some people say that I had a woman problem. I don't have a woman problem. I don't have a male problem. I have a relationship problem. And I'm for darn sure not going to have an intimate relationship with another male because my gate don't swing open both ways. And to be quite honest with you, I rather play in the more of the safe field than I would the danger field towards dating and being involved in anybody's life, because obviously I have not been successful in relationships in the past. It's not that I have a female problem. It's not that I have a male problem. It's I have a relationship problem, and because of it, I steer clear towards becoming that emotionally affectionate, close to anybody's life in that perspective.
Yes, we've been talking about the amount of people coming over that we don't know who's entering our country and the terrorist threat from external. But I'd also talk about a terrorist threat internal. I think to 9/11 and what happened there, but I also think back to the Oklahoma City bombing. And what is happening is people in this country are furious at this open border crisis. That's why it's so imperative that the Senate and the House work with the president to come up with a national security package that puts the country above everything else.
Okay. Well, we know from some of the negotiators who've been out this morning that they don't think one is within reach right now. But CBS is reporting the White House says that it's willing to accept drastic limits on asylum. That's raising the credible fear standard, as you know, and a vast expansion of detention and deportation efforts as part of this deal. Are you supportive of what you've heard is in this proposal?
I think it's a good start. I think the devil's in the details when you start talking about deportation flights. I think, are you talking about one flight? Or are you talking about 20 flights? Are you talking about deportating only from along the border? Or are we talking in the interior as well? The credible fear standard, I think that's an area that most people agree that we need to raise, and I think that's one. But are we going to add Border Patrol agents? If so, how many Border Patrol agents? And then the Senate is much different than the House. The Senate is going to have its battle getting to 60 votes. The House is going to have its battle getting to 218.
Yeah.
And we can do that, but I think we have to sweeten the deal. And part of that is we have to get to the root of the issue. The root of the issue is labeling cartels as terrorist organizations. And the other piece is holding these smugglers accountable that cause damage and kill Americans. Those are all a couple things that I could help, that I believe can help get the House to 218 votes.
Well, of the deal that we know is being negotiated right now, I haven't heard that a terrorist designation of cartels is in it. Are you saying it is being talked about right now?
I'm saying the deal between the Senate and the White House is going to be much different than the House and the overall package.
That's what you would want to add to it.
And part of that is coming to the realization that there's going to have to be some different things in there. And part of that is labeling cartels as terrorist organizations. It will help get the House to 218 votes. I'd also say, too, if the White House is serious about this, the White House, they shouldn't be sending a Secretary Mayorkas, to the negotiating table. Where's the president or where's the vice president? These are some areas that I think could increase the level of getting to a real deal.
Okay, well, if this is crisis, when the House comes back in January, we're going headlong into another showdown over government funding.
I want to clarify something real quick, because he mentioned the Oklahoma bombing that I have spent a great deal of research on. Putting things in the wrong category pertaining to people coming to America and being a homegrown terrorist. Timothy McVeigh was a true red-blooded American pertaining to a homegrown terrorist that had lived here all his life, that disagreed in what took place down in Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas, because of the way that the certain government officials handled themselves in killing the Branch Davidians down there. So whenever he compares David Koresh with people coming over here to America that's going to be a homegrown terrorist, you need to put it in the right perspective, because basically the people that is coming over here are, first of all, they're not homegrown. They're not homegrown. And secondly, we've only been attacked that we know of on a big scale pertaining to 9/11, and I personally believe that 9/11 was manifested because of the way that the Bush and the Reagans went at the Desert Storm and the Desert Shield, that caused so much animosity that they was going to take it out on the American people's lives, regardless whether it was fair play or not, that was going to hit us below the belt with a terrorist attack that was financed, motivated, and orchestrated by the Saudi Arabians.
And it's created this anger. And it's not just former President Trump. I mean, in my district, people are angry, Margaret, all throughout the country. People are angry and seeing all this chaos. It's why it's so important that the House, the Senate, and the President come together and find a real solution, a national security package that takes care of our allies.
Now, that part I agree with.
Protects us at home, not only from foreign threats, but also internal threats, because the anger is very real.
Right. It is.
I realize that. And we need to acknowledge it, but that phrasing, poisoning the blood, is reminiscent of language the White House says Hitler used, which is why I wanted to get you to specifically respond to that. The Biden campaign, there's, I have to leave it there. I'm told by my producer we are out of time, Congressman, but we will come back to you, as I know you are very much tracking these ongoing negotiations. Face the Nation will be back in a minute. Stay with us.
It has affected our culture. Now, you can use it and illustrate it by poisoning the blood. You can say it poisoned our minds. You can say because of this or because of that. But you got to put everything into the package towards putting the dots together. And TV and social media, internet, has been a instrument or a asset to people wanting to bring destruction and bring chaos to the American people's lives. So really and truly, we've brought this upon to ourselves in allowing for all these gizmos and gadgets to come over here, and we was not controlling them in the proper form towards putting side rails in knowing how that instead of smartphone technology being an asset, now it's being used as an actual weapon. Instead of it building our lives, it's destroying our lives.
Funding, but also policy. And from what we are reporting, those two elements in particular, raising the credible fear standard on asylum and expanding detention and deportation efforts, some in the Democratic caucus are objecting. Are you okay with it?
Well, I need to know the final deals, but I am likely to support this. I have spoken with a number of the negotiators. They have been working hard this weekend. I am hopeful that we can reach a conclusion this coming week. Margaret, for us to fail to come together and support Ukraine in their ongoing fight for freedom against Russian aggression would be a huge gift to Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping and Hamas. There's a lot of other things in this funding package that I strongly support. Interdicting fentanyl at our border, strengthening border security, humanitarian relief, aid to our Indo-Pacific partners, support for Israel. So frankly, if we can come together on a border security deal that gets bipartisan support, I will support it.
But some of your fellow Democrats like Bob Menendez have said it's shameful and selling out migrants and asylum seekers. Why is he wrong?
I understand Senator Menendez's passion on the part of making sure that our immigration system is safe, legal, and humane. But as I've often said in talking about the campaign for 24, President Biden needs to be compared not to the almighty, not to a perfect alternative, but to the actual alternative. And you just played for Congressman Gonzalez the stunning, hateful, fascist rhetoric of former President Trump when he's talking about poisoning the blood of our nation. The former president would bring in place not these modest changes to asylum policy, but radical and dramatic changes to immigration policy. We need to take seriously that there is a border security crisis, and we need to take responsible steps that reflect our values.
And
then that should have been done before President Trump ever run for president. Because those things was going on that our politicians, that a lot of them are still in power to this day, allowed for that to go on and fester as long as it has. Donald Trump, once more, he's a straight shooter. He may have used the wrong wording in his messages pertaining to him being a messenger, but the bottom line is this: our culture right now, the American culture, is just as much of a risk of it changing, if not more, than what it was before the risation of the Revolutionary War. I'm going to repeat that. Our culture and our way of life here in America is endangered just as much, if not more, than what it was before the risation of the Revolutionary War against the Americans and the Redcoats. It was the Europeans that wanted to come over here and dictate, and like Donald Trump said, poison the blood of the Native American people towards changing our culture. And they almost succeeded in doing that completely. It was a movement at that time towards wanting to destroy America pertaining to who and what America was before the Revolutionary War. And it wasn't until the Revolutionary War when people started waking up to the fact that, my God, this is America. We don't have to be under some sort of dictator pertaining to King George III. These people are coming over here panhandling on us. They're wanting to change the whole concept of the American way of life. And it took bloodshed for people to wake up, for people to awaken. Which leads me to the $64,000 question. Is that what it's going to take again before America wakes up in understanding this onslaught pertaining to this invasion? And it is an invasion. It's an invasion upon to our lives. It's an invasion upon to our families. It's an invasion upon to our culture. It's an invasion upon to the way that we handle ourselves and how that we desire and want to live and how that we pursue ourselves. It's an invasion. But this invasion isn't just coming in the form of illegal immigrants or immigrants in general. It's coming in the form of fentanyl. It's coming in the form of all this outlandish sinful activity going on in the country, all this paranormal behavior, all the guns, all the gun violence, all the suicides, all the undisciplined parents that's not allowed to discipline their children properly. I'm not saying that you should abuse them, because I'm the first one that will kick up about abusing a child. But at the same time, I'm one of the first ones that kick up about a community that wasn't willing to see an individual such as my dad that had post-traumatic stress disorder pertaining to World War II, not having the gumption of standing up against that individual towards trying to spare or save his family. There is so many loose ends that if the American people does not pay close attention to this particular election, it will be a determining factor towards whether or not we go further into the darkness or we start to drag ourselves back into the light. And the only way that we're going to be able to accomplish that is just like Franklin Graham, Billy Graham's son, continues to say, that it's going to take God and God alone. It's going to take a spiritual revival to change the wickedness of man's hearts and of their minds, in waking us up, in understanding that this is the right path that we need to go in. And a lot of times it does make a difference in the individual towards being the messenger of how they present the message to the people. That's the reason why that today, of all times, our ministers, our clergymen, our pastors, our missionaries, our preachers, our spiritual advisors need to be on top of their game today, more so than any time, in understanding that putting the wrong person in power could be a determining factor of whether or not we completely go under or we start dragging ourselves out. And I personally see no way that we're going to be able to pay off this national indebtedness, that somebody is going to have to engineer a new system of bartering in some way, and they're going to have to basically declare bankruptcy on this system, because the system itself is dragging down and destroying people's lives and not making it available for other people that's unfortunate, that wasn't born with a silver spoon in their mouths, towards never having an opportunity of advancing and being basically successful.
Jones is back with us. Senator, I want to pick up where we left off. We're talking about some potentially tough votes that will have to be taken in the near term, with the border, with Ukraine, with Israel and Taiwan, all of those bundled together. Was it a strategic mistake for the White House to suggest bundling all of those, as the president did in that Oval Office address when he asked for this big national security supplemental?
No, Margaret, I think we're at a moment where all around the world, our partners and allies need to see that we are strong. President Biden's done a remarkable job of pulling together a global coalition of 50 countries who in combination have contributed more to Ukraine's defense than we have, and making sure that we're pushing back on China and their predatory actions in the Indo-Pacific.
Maybe in that sense, he may be right. But on the other level, you got to look at Biden towards, during 9/11, was asked the simple question, did he think that we was safer today than what we was prior to 9/11? And his response was absolutely 100%. But then a few weeks later, all hell busts loose over in the Middle East. We got to have people that has their eye on the ball, that can recognize the dangers that the American people are going to have to either sustain or the American people are going to have to work around. That way it is not such devastation in our communities and in our lives. And if we don't, we could actually go further in the darkness than getting us back into the light.
For revamped Palestinian Authority, when he said, among friends, it's important not to foster illusions. That seems to be casting the president's vision as diluted. Is that acceptable from an ally who's asking for billions of dollars in aid?
Prime Minister Netanyahu has been an exceptionally difficult partner. And I think President Biden did the right thing right after the horrific attack by Hamas, to go to Israel, to stand strong with Israel, and frankly, to send a firm message to Iran to stay out of this conflict. He deployed 2 aircraft carrier battle groups to the region so that Israel could focus on its self-defense against Hamas and not face an open attack from Hezbollah on the north or Houthis on the south, or Iranian forces up on the Golan Heights. What has been a real challenge is the big gap between most of us in Congress and the president, who believe a 2-state solution is the only way forward, and Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has done everything he can to undermine a positive vision for peace for Israel.
So you have leverage here, though, policy-wise. I mean, the president has been very vocal in defending the prime minister and his choices, but President Biden did say the bombing is indiscriminate. The U.S. provides billions of dollars, like $3 billion or more a year. We're looking at another 10. Can't you put in some kind of provision here to force adherence to international law or U.S. law, as Senator Van Hollen is proposing?
Margaret, there already are requirements in American law that when we send military assistance to another country, whether it's Ukraine or it's Israel, that they have to abide by international law. And President Biden and the senior members of his team who've gone to Israel repeatedly have had some success in pressing Prime Minister Netanyahu to change direction, most recently in reining in settler violence in the West Bank. Because of elements of Netanyahu's cabinet, folks like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, that's been difficult for Netanyahu to do, but we have imposed sanctions on those who are fomenting settler violence, and President Biden has successfully pressed to get more humanitarian aid into Gaza and a reduction in settler violence. This is a difficult, challenging moment, and I know you're going to move on to some positive news about our economy, about other things we're getting done in Washington, but I am so grateful that in this moment, a seasoned and capable leader like President Biden is the one at the helm in the midst of all these challenging crises in our world.
And we should mention, you are a Biden surrogate for the campaign, sir. So on that note, we're going to leave it there because we have to turn to the war in Gaza. And our Rami Inocencio, who has the latest from Tel Aviv.
Chasing a UN aid truck that had just crossed in from Egypt this morning, hundreds of desperate Gazans ransacked it and ran off with boxes. This morning, too, a breakthrough in aid. Israel will now allow UN trucks to drive directly into Gaza from the Kerem Shalom crossing, while Israel's military pressed ahead with its bombardment across the 25-mile strip.
They are without water, without food, and there is a sniper inside the compound.
A UK member of parliament said an Israeli sniper has pinned down her Christian family and more than 50 disabled people in Gaza's only Roman Catholic church.
There's a woman and her daughter who have been killed.
Nearby, at northern Gaza's last functioning hospital, withdrawing tanks and troops left behind devastation. We don't have houses or relatives anymore, said this woman. Where should we go? While in the south, in Khan Yunis, medics say dozens of dead killed by airstrikes arrived at Nasser Hospital over the weekend. Outside, dozens of mourners buried another journalist. Samar Abu Daqqa worked for Al Jazeera television. At least 64 journalists have reportedly been killed in this war so far. And in the West Bank, Israeli soldiers shot and killed 5 Palestinians over the weekend, with nearly 300 killed since October 7th, says the Palestinian Health Ministry. Overnight, in Tel Aviv's Hostage Square, thousands demanded their government make a deal with Hamas, Akshav in Hebrew, meaning now.
And put the best offer on the table to get the hostages back alive. Alive.
I don't imagine it can be any more urgent than it has been before.
Are you angry?
My anger only aims towards my government.
But after admitting its own troops killed 3 hostages in Gaza Friday, pressure has hit a new high against the prime minister to get the hostages still alive home. We are working with Qatar and Egypt, said Benjamin Netanyahu late Saturday in his first acknowledgement that Qatar's Prime Minister, Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani, met Israel's spy chief, David Barnea, in France Friday. 2 days after Israel's war cabinet reportedly denied his offer to restart talks. And here at Hostage Square, we are learning of more international calls for a ceasefire coming from the foreign ministers of the United Kingdom and Germany, which is a major policy shift. And adding to the pressure, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin is expected to arrive here tomorrow.
It's Remy Inocencio reporting from Israel. Our producer Marwan Al-Ghul has the latest on the devastation in Gaza.
Good morning. I am here at this point between Rafah and Khan Younis city behind me. I can hear fire exchange and bombing on this city, which is the main target for the Israeli troops. In the other direction, Rafah still have receiving more and more fled people from Khan Younis city and in the north of Gaza Strip. This city, it's crowded of millions of new displaced people in this city. If I want to talk about journalists were gathering near Kuwaiti hospitals. They fixed some tents for them.
A war correspondent right now being over there in that hot zone would be in danger no matter where they was.
That we put together, trying to create what looks like it and something to protect us from the cold, even though they don't.
2 days ago, the Press family lost one of the most well-known cameraman, Samer Abu Dakka from Al Jazeera news channel. Here I'm again hearing bombing in Khan Younis city behind me.
He was famous.
Marwan Al-Ghul reporting from Gaza, where he lives. Our Leslie Stahl spoke with Yarden Roman Gat, one of the Israelis taken hostage during the Hamas attacks on October 7th and held for nearly 2 months for tonight's 60 Minutes.
As a woman, the fear of getting raped or the variety of
all the above.
The act could never get off your mind. Never. It's just not an option, because as long as you're there, you're hopeless. You have no protection. You cannot object to anything. It could cost you your life. And that fear was not as extreme the whole time, but it will never go away. It's always there.
For more of their conversation, tune in to 60 Minutes tonight after football. We'll be back in a moment.
Now that's what war brings.
Let's face it.
It brings harm and hurt. It brings destruction into people's lives. And just like she said, just a mere example of trying to speak out against something or speak for something could actually cost you your life. That's the very same atmosphere that the Saudis promote towards their maintaining their people over there, and etc. And it's a tinderbox just waiting basically to ignite to the degree that it could become a very, very aggressive regional war in the aspect of Iran and all them other countries over there turning into nothing but a bloodbath. And it would be intensely sad, but that is how close that things are in escalating on levels basically of people that couldn't even begin to believe.
To the economy and some good news. The Federal Reserve predicts slowing inflation could lead it to make 3 interest rate cuts next year, which means borrowing costs for mortgages.
The interest rates never should have went up to begin with. They was cutting their own noses off to despite their faces, and instead of being part of the solution to the problem, the feds was the problem by raising the interest rates up the way that they did, by causing that many more people to have to default or declare bankruptcy on their notes. I've never seen a government that has been turned so upside down and not knowing what to do and in the format in doing it, especially whenever it comes to running something appropriately. And as far as what's going on over there right now in the Holy Land, you know, I feel sorry for the people in Jerusalem. They have been caught now in between a hard place and a rock and having to make a decision. I feel sorry for the citizens of Pakistan because they was held under a evil, brutal regime, and it's just a total chaotic mess, a tinderbox just waiting to basically explode. And God only knows. I mean, we could wake up in the morning and seeing where somebody had activated a nuclear bomb, and basically
is Ukraine's ambassador to the United States.
Basically seeing a mushroom bomb at any given moment over in the Middle East. But as far as that goes, we could see the same thing coming from Russia that has been threatening with nuclear armament now for the past 2 years. It's chaotic. It's chaotic, and you have to ask yourself a question. Where's the end game to all this? Are we basically going to annihilate the planet and annihilate ourselves? Have we become that displacent and not being able to recognize these entrapments that the satanic, evil, demonic world is basically entrapping the Homo sapiens with? Are we that stupid? Are we that blind? Once more, we're taking 1 step forward and 2 steps back. We have been going in the opposite direction of peace and utopia since the movement began in the White House in 1988, whenever 9 cassette tapes wound up falling in the lap of the United States president at the time, which was Ronald Reagan. Whenever you do something like this, purposely, willfully, intentionally, consciously, thinking that you're going to defy not just God's people, but God himself, God will slap you up beside the face pertaining to your inadequacies and show you how the cow was going to eat the cabbage, even at the expense of allowing for things to get out of control the way that they are. Now, we're at the crossroads here, and we can make a decision for ourselves, and whether or not we want to go further into the darkness or we want to eventually start pulling out of the darkness back into the light. And like I said, just like Billy Graham's son, Franklin Graham, has said, just like other spiritual leaders have said, and are continually to saying, that the only way to get us out of this mess, it is going to take God and the Spirit of God to revolutionize in a revival of a spiritual movement that will eventually evolve into peace and utopia. The very thing that white man was talking about, the white man speaking with a forked tongue, the very thing that they was talking about but wasn't willing to implement. Nobody was willing to stand with the founder of the Windmill Ministries missions. And to this day, as far as I know, unless they're doing it secretly, maybe they're admirers of mine, which I'm not saying that they're not, but that ain't worth a hill of beans if you're not actually willing to implement it. So there you go. There you go. Which come first, the chicken or the egg? Stupid. At the expense of agony and misery and sorrow to not only ourselves, but to our children and our children's children? Wow. We're supposed to be the most intelligent beings on the planet, but we're allowing ourselves to fall into this entrapment like this? You tell me where the fault falls upon the feet of those. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Dennis James Jackson, known as Juby, did not fail in the pretense of the Windmill Ministries missions. It was the people that failed the ministry, because they didn't get in behind the founder of the ministry that was pursuing peace, love, utopia, grace, forgiveness, mercy, people getting along and loving one another, etc., etc. But now whenever I come back here in 2014, all hell resonated with various people in this community wanting once more to beat the horse at the wrong end towards blaming me for my brother's death, blaming me for this, blaming me for that. Oh, it was all my fault. It was all my fault. Bringing that much more torment into our lives that the courts in Dresden, Tennessee sat idly by and allowed. Sat idly by and allowed.
States and is back with us. Good morning to you, Ambassador.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
President Biden said Congress is about to give Vladimir Putin the best Christmas present he could get. How urgent is it that this funding be approved this year?
Well, time is of the essence, and time is already running out because, as you know, we already do not have any programs of support except for some presidential.
Time is of the essence, and time has been of the essence now for quite some times. This just didn't creep up into our lives today or yesterday. This has been going on now for quite some time, and we're still steadily going in the wrong direction. Why wouldn't I, if you was me and you had a brother and you was being bombarded, tormented, hunted, terrorized the way that we was down here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255, or 430 Beech Grove Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255, why wouldn't you have thought or believed in the same thing, that either they didn't care what was going on in Dresden, Tennessee, or they themselves was supporting it and was in behind it, pertaining to dereliction of duty? I feel like that anybody in their right minds, after get through analyzing this case, and that's exactly what it is, it's a case. I'm raising a case pertaining to what went on here because of a death of my younger sibling at the age of 51 that died, as far as I'm concerned, a premature, illegitimate death because of stress-related emotional issues that could have been avoided. Could have been avoided even before I come back here in 2014. That was brewing down here. So it's not just about Juby, and it's not just about the contents of Juby or the surrounding of Juby's atmosphere. You can blame it on Juby, but I guarantee you can look at the records up there at the sheriff's office that's supposed to be hidden, but then again, under the pretense of open records, under the Information Act, you can see where there was problems at this particular area with a certain particular family or families that went way beyond,
on Kiev, on
went
other
way,
places
way
they're
beyond
very similar to
20 and 14.
attacks.
Went way beyond me coming back here in the year 20 and 14. This was brewing. This was brewing, and I basically had to come into a middle of a war zone that I had really no idea that it was this intense. I knew that some of the things that went on, but I didn't know the details of them, and I didn't know the intensity of them. Kind of like what we're experiencing now pertaining to what's going on in other bigger events all over the world.
All civilized people, all people who believe in freedom, that we can stay the course much better than autocrats because they are uniting.
The White House says there's about $1 billion left. And then you mentioned drawdown. That's $4.6 billion. But they've indicated they don't want to get into that because it could impact U.S. military readiness. Would they? Do you know?
Well, first of all, the reason why we really need all three programs, even for the defense assistance, like USAA, a specific program for Ukraine, and foreign military sales, because there is a lot that we were buying, the US was buying from American producers here in the US, like drones and rockets and interceptors for the air defense. And I can go on, and you cannot take it using the drawdown. You need to go to industrial base in order for them to produce it. So yes, we do have this drawdown authority, and we are trying together with your military to find whatever is there to still be used and not go below your critical readiness, but it's tough. So we really, all the eyes are on Congress now, and we really hope that this progress that we hear about, and they will be able to find a solution. And look, as the former Minister of Finance, I negotiated many budgets with my parliament. I understand the importance of the local priorities, and I understand how important the border discussions are. We can just only pray and hope that there will be a result there, and that the deal that they will be able to reach will allow the fast decisions also on the support to Ukraine.
Well, as you mentioned, the border and the lack of an agreement is holding up everything else, because the idea is to package the border with Ukraine aid. During the visit to the United States by your president this past week, he did give an interview to Fox News, and he spoke about his meeting with Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. And President Zelensky said, decision in December, decision in January, decision in February. The big difference is it's not about financing, it's about the morality. Republicans heard your president say that and are now arguing he was telling us it's not all that urgent. We have a few more months. Are they misinterpreting your president?
No, I think the president has been very direct and very open in all the meetings, from president to vice president to Senate to speaker, describing how difficult the fight is, how many combat operations we have on a daily basis, every day, including today, on how many drone attacks and other attacks, missile attacks on Ukraine we have. 34 Shahed drones yesterday, just already 7 today. He also said that the time was of the essence, and he mentioned all the results that we were able to achieve, not only in 2002 on the ground, but also in 2003 in the Black Sea. But he was very clear that we need to stay the course, and that we need money and support, and especially the security assistance, and we need it in October, November. So no, he was very clear. But of course, we cannot get into the internal situation. We cannot tell people what to do. We can only ask Americans to continue supporting us. So time is important.
So the White House says there's not a stalemate in Ukraine, and the White House declassified intelligence saying Russia lost 87% of their military personnel to injury or death since this war began. Those are measured as successes. But as you know, Ukraine's military hasn't made the gains that the U.S. had been hoping for on the battlefield. How do you change the trajectory?
Well, in effect, we have. So to be able to hold such a large landline and not allow Russians to take any of our villages, and also have the progress on the now left bank also of Dnipro, is already a huge success, comparing our armed forces, comparing the capabilities. Now, we had a lot of success in the Black Sea, and I think that's what a lot of people overlook, that since June and July, when the summer campaign started, we were sitting here with you discussing how we were praying for Russia not to pull out from the grain corridor so that we can use it, and we were completely at the mercy of them. We don't even need to ask them now. We have the grain corridor because we have degraded their fleet so much. We got them all the way to their own ports, from the Crimean ports, and it's a huge progress in the counteroffensive.
We will continue to watch that. Ambassador, thank you for being here. We'll be right back.
Unbelievable, and how much confusion, misadvised, unbelievable. Well, in one way it's unbelievable. In the times that we're living in, I guess it is believable. You don't really have no other choice but to believe it, because it is in fact happening. Good luck to all of us is all I got to say, and God bless America. We need to pray extensively for the things that's going on over in the Middle East right now. That is basically just a tinderbox waiting to explode. We need to pray for the things that's going on over in Russia, pertaining to Ukraine. We need to pray for other countries pertaining to the hardships that their citizens are experiencing right now. We need to pray for one another. We need to pray for our communities. We need to pray for our leaders. We need to pray that God's holy anointing will be done. Because just as Billy Graham's son, Franklin Graham, continues to say that the only thing that's going to save this planet and the things on this planet pertaining to the contents is God. No satanic club down in Memphis, no type of Wiccans, no type of other different organizations or cultures or religion groups are going to save this planet and the substances on this planet. It's going to take God, G-O-D with a capital, and the Lord Jesus Christ and his precious Holy Spirit. And if we're not willing to accept that and act upon that, well then get ready, because total hell is fixing to bust loose, not only in the American people's lives, but all throughout the planet. And don't think that we're basically exempt, kind of like being prejudiced whenever it comes to hard times. Don't think that the American people
and really have
that the American people
and this week a new digital ad put out by two advocacy groups in Texas put a fine point on something
from
that
these
we
things,
and millions
because
of
I
others have been
guarantee
saying
you,
for years.
even though it may be
Gun violence in this country is urgent
6,000 miles
and
away,
requires far more from our
it's still going to affect our lives right here in the good old USA.
It's especially true now that firearms have become the leading cause of death among children in this country. So make no mistake, the ad you're about to see is disturbing. It's very hard to watch, but it speaks the truth about this issue in a moment when we desperately need it. And that's why we decided to end our show today by airing it in its entirety. Please, God, save her. Do something. Save her. Please save her.
My thoughts and prayers are with you.
Thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts. Prayers.
Thoughts and prayers!
Well, first of all, big amen to all of that. But this hour, the former president...
What was I saying earlier? People are going to have to get off their hips. They're going to have to become active. They're going to have to be predominantly visual. And they're going to have to speak out and act upon to that in which what needs to be acted either upon or acted against. Because if not, all these people with all their thoughts and all their prayers is just like the little woman that a beer joint was fixing to move right beside a church, and they tried everything in the world to stop them from building this beer joint, but because they had money and because of the rights, they went ahead and was pursuing towards building the beer joint. Even after the beer joint got built, there was a honky-tonk right beside the church with all kinds of outlandish behavior that the people was steadily praying, God, God, please make this go away. God, God, please make this go away, until one day they got news over the night that the beer joint had burnt down. And the following next Sunday, they was all praising God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for burning down the beer joint. And one little old woman stood up in the congregation. And she said, yeah, the beer joint, the honky tonk did burn down, but it was only because I went down there with a 5-gallon can of gas and burned it down myself. You got to be proactive, and you have to be logical in what you're doing, because prayers are just like raindrops, and if the raindrop develops but it never hits the ground, what good is the raindrop? It just as well's not even materialized into a raindrop if it never hits the ground. Now, I'm not telling people to go out here and do illegal things. I'm not telling people that it's the right, appropriate thing to burn down a beer joint or to burn down a honky-tonk or to burn anything down towards causing violence and destruction to property or to people. But I'm making a point, metaphorically speaking, that it's just like the little woman that stood up and said, yes, I put legs on them prayers, and I went down there with that 5-gallon can of gas, and I burnt that honky-tonk down to the ground. In other words, she was willing to be proactive, maybe in a wrong way. I'm going to go as far as say, yes, in a wrong way, towards creating that type of property damage. But the point being is that if we do not stand up in doing the proper and right thing, expecting for somebody else to do it for us, it won't never get done. It won't never get done. Donald Trump is a straight shooter. He is not a professional politician. He's going to put stuff out there that sounds very rough around the edges and will be very, very offensive to a lot of people. But the bottom line is this: our culture in America is under attack. It's not just our democracy. It's our whole culture. The same as the culture was under attack before the French and the American Revolution. It's the same playbook. It's just coming today in a different form, in a different way. And if we, as true sovereign Americans, cannot understand that and identify that, then obviously either you are not a patriot, or you yourself, instead of being the solution to the problem, are the problem. And if that be the case, then maybe you should remain silent and stand in the corner somewhere like some little whatever, and just let whatever becomes upon to the American land come up onto the American land. I am trying everything within my power to say the right thing and to do the right thing. The people over in Afghanistan that we went over there to conform for 10 consecutive years and spent over $2 trillion, and God only knows at the lives and the eyes and the arms and the legs and the psychological damage that went on over there towards doing that, gave up in 11 days, laid down, and allowed for the enemy to take back over their property, take back over their lives. And to this day, I feel so sorry for the women and children over there that basically was defenseless, or the elderly that couldn't do no better for themselves. But the young ones that could, did not. Could, but did not. So in actuality, the women and the children and the elderly over there has no one to blame but their own group, their own structure, their own families, their own countrymen that would not stand up against the Taliban. Now, is that what we're going to do? Is that what we're going to do as far as lay down and let it happen? I'm like Ronald Reagan. I'd rather die on my feet knowing that I was trying to do the right thing than to be miserably fed and led, laying down and not doing the right thing. If that's what living is about, I don't want no part of it. I don't want no part of it. The Ukrainians don't want no part of it. And the people over in Jerusalem and Israel don't want no part of it. And there's other people throughout this planet that are being ruled, dominated either by drug lords, cartels, evil, demonic, cruel people that, inherited whatever that they inherited, or they made whatever that they made, probably in an illegal way, being drug cartel salesmen or gun dealers or whatever, and it's out of hand. It's out of control. And if we allow for this to get in the same shape that the Afghanistan people allowed by laying down 11 days later, after we spent 10 years over there, we'll be just like them. We'll have nobody to blame other than ourselves. Now, people can criticize me, they can demonize me, they can dehumanize me, in which I'm adjusted to that. I've become callous to that. David Jeffrey Jackson was not. David Jeffrey Jackson was taking it now straight in the face, on the cheek. He was watching his brother get abused, used, violated, tormented, and terrorized for 30 years. And it wasn't until I moved back here is whenever David realized, my God, Juby, is this the type of resistances that you've been receiving now for 30 plus years? I said, yes, David, it is. And he come back, he said, my God, if we was living back in Grandpa's day, back during our great-grandfather's day in the early 1900s, he said there would already been a lynch mob come down here and have done already strung us up and hung us or burn our property down to the ground. I said, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. And to be quite honest with you, in a way, that's exactly what Dresden, Tennessee, pertaining to the courthouse, the seat of this great county, that's exactly what they allowed to happen. No, they didn't burn her house down, and no, they didn't actually perform an out-and-out lynching, but what they did do was bring so many problems to David Jeffrey Jackson's life that he could not sustain or obtain the type of pressures that was coming from his peers, those that said that he was his friends, those that he went to school with, those that was using him and abusing him the whole time. And basically, David Jeffrey Jackson died of a broken heart, along with his emotions and everything else that was going on in his life at that time at the age of 51. And yes, there will be people in this area, in this community, that one day will stand in front of the Almighty that will give an account. But let's go even further than that. The people that initiated that seed, going all the way back to 1983, leading into 1988 and 89, whenever the resistance movement sure enough got out of hand here in Northwest Tennessee, those would sure enough be the people that will give an account. And some of them people have already done perished. Some of them people have already done met their maker. Some of them people have already been asked the question, how come you seen that individual that was so passionate about what he was doing and you still would not give him the time of day? And I still blame it upon the fact of not so much a cowardly group of people, but a group of people that was paying more attention to the latter part of the scriptures in Revelation chapter 6, verses 3 and 4 of the opening of the red horse, Satan's era, that they was looking more towards the latter part of the verse than it was the first part of the verse, because it says that there was given power to Satan. In his growing up, he owned a red horse, to take peace from the earth, and that they shall kill one another. Even Tommy Moore, the judge in Weakley County, said, Juby, I've had ain't no tellings how many people that has come to me telling me that as far as they was concerned, this was some sort of manifesto coming from you. And they believe that you are of the black horse versus of the white horse. I got news for Tommy Moore and people like Tommy Moore. that's sitting behind a bench that claim to be a judge. A manifesto is something that you implement. A manifesto is dealing with rules and regulations. A manifesto is demands. I didn't write the Bible. I didn't write the book of Revelations. I didn't write the book of Daniel that corresponds with the book of Revelations. I didn't write none of those things pertaining to the King James. All I am is the messenger to the King James. Now, if those that listen to my message wants to take those things out of concept, out of perspective, then that's up to them. If they want to pay more attention to the latter part of the verse versus the first part of the verse pertaining to peace and utopia and love and grace and mercy, then that's up to them. But I'm still not going to change my position pertaining to the seed that was planted in my heart and in my mind and in my soul, going all the way back to 1983, whenever I should have died, but two hands miraculously come out of heaven that spared my life. I'm not going to change my testimony about that. I'm not going to change my testimony about what went on in my life in 1988 pertaining to the angels coming down from heaven and planting a crown of thorns upon my head. I'm not going to retaliate or back up or retreat from me meeting the actual darkly complected man over in Martin, Tennessee on 3 different occasions pertaining to him and his disciples being Satan in the flesh. And if that's what they've been hoping for around here, good luck. Because the only time that I'm going to give up my testimony, which I won't be giving it up, I'll just be giving it up in this life, will be whenever I breathe my last breath. It's just like my brother David said, the only way that they're going to run me from this property is in a body bag. And David ate them words. And I may very well eat my words, okay? And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Because they're not going to run me away. They're not going to drive me away. They're not going to cause me to have a different opinion about what has happened towards telling the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. And they can either believe it and support it, or they can walk away and continue to fester in their own misery and in their own inadequacies that they have created for themselves, not only here in Northwest Tennessee, but throughout this great loving nation. I cannot say it any clearer or any more better than what I just got through saying it. And maybe I did use the wrong tone of voice. Maybe I was a little bit too aggressive. Maybe I am speaking to the wrong crowd here. But I'm doing what I feel like is appropriate to say and do during the time that I do it. And the bottom line is this: David and I was defenseless down here. We called upon various attorneys to help us, and the courts failed us. The courts failed us in Weakley County, Tennessee, and there's no other way to decipher it, interpret it, or translate it after you get through looking at the whole picture and not just bits and pieces of it. You see, that's where our law has failed itself. Instead of wanting to teach children how to have sex pertaining to sex education programs, they need to teach people the law. That way, they'll know how far to go with the law, and they'll also know whether or not the lawmen, the people that's enforcing the law, are doing their jobs or not. The situation with various families, with my family, should have been settled way before I ever come back here to this area in 2014. Should have been settled, and somebody should have been reprimanded harshly to the degree that they would have learned their lesson towards not bringing hardship upon to this property. I don't know. I didn't know all the details about everything. I just know that my own brother was taken down on his own property by 3 individuals, and basically they took his gun from him and put it to his head, and the only thing that saved his life is that his clip was fell out of the gun, and the gun had a safety feature on it that if the clip was not in the gun could not activate. But David told me, he said, Juby, if I didn't buy that particular Beretta that had that safety feature on it, you wouldn't have went to just one funeral. You wouldn't have went to 2 funerals, but you would have went to 3 funerals in the span of a 12-month period. Now that's how abrupt that it come here in Northwest Tennessee in Weakley County merging into Obion County. Good luck to all of us. God bless America. Here at the Exchange, you're fixing to be Christmas. And I guess less than 9-10 days away. And shalom.